I was telling some of them that I'm impressed by your interest in metaphysics. That's quite good. At some point, metaphysics is called like the queen of philosophy, so it's a good thing to be interested in the most important part of philosophy. That is metaphysics. When we discussed this with Father Ioannis, he said there are a group of you that was interested in metaphysics, that you had some questions. So I will just say 2 words. If you have some questions or interests or doubts, we can explore them. If you don't have, I can show you some basic concepts of metaphysics that might be useful if you are interested in philosophy. I don't know if that's okay for you. I don't know, any of you is studying philosophy? No.
Kind of.
What are you studying?
Well, I studied 1 year in Poland.
Okay.
Like the realistic philosophy.
Okay. Thomas, you St. Thomas Aquinas?
Aristotle, and then Thomas.
Great.
The basics, basically.
Yeah, very basic, but that's a good starting point. Anyone familiarized with Thomistic philosophy? Okay. You follow some channel in YouTube, something like that, some person that explains?
Well, Aristotle wrote the book Metaphysics, right? So you can read that. And
Great starting point.
Read the commentaries of St. Thomas on the Metaphysics.
Yeah, wonderful.
And there's the Thomistic Institute, right?
Okay, so some of you know Thomistic Institute? Well, let's start very general and then go to the particular. We follow and we consider the best philosophy to be Thomistic philosophy. What is this Thomas? Not Thomas the Apostle, but St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest theologians of the whole history of the church and of the world. He was a medieval saint. He died on 1274 at the Abbey of Fossanova, where we live. I have the honor of living there. And he was an extraordinary mind. I mean, if you study philosophy, history of philosophy, you will for sure study him. And the Catholic theology is mostly based on his theology and philosophy. That's why it's so important to study St. Thomas Aquinas to understand the teachings of the church. No? So the only theologian that was, for example, in Catholic formation, the only theologian that a council explicitly said that it has to be studied is St. Thomas Aquinas. So I advise you, if you want to start introducing yourself into Thomistic philosophy, it's a very good thing to do. There are different ways of doing that. The Thomistic Institute have some talks in the internet for a very basic presentations. You have Aquinas 101. They do some very simple introduction video on some topics, and that's a good starting point for non-philosophers to start introducing in Thomistic philosophy. So St. Thomas Aquinas. The image of St. Thomas Aquinas.
Father?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why does his teachings? Why is the whole church based on those teachings? And why does it have such a high authority?
Yeah. Well, I have the whole talk on that answer. For doing it in a simple way to understand, he takes the most the better fruits of the Western philosophical tradition, especially Greek tradition. I mean, for philosophy, the basic, the starting point of the highest philosophy is Greek philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, and he takes that and he integrates that philosophy with the Christian vision, and he developed also a specific view on metaphysical problems, and for many authors, that solution, the solution he offers, is the best solution for philosophical problems. So that's why it's the basis for that, generally speaking. But then when you start exploring some specific topics, for example, ethics and morals, he has a whole treatise of moral, and all the moral teachings of the church are based especially on his view. So it's very important. Yeah. This is a representation of him. He was a Dominican friar, so he had white and black cape. He's the text, and he's most of the time represented with the sun in the chest for his wisdom, the sign of the wisdom. Okay, but here we are not. The idea is to speak about metaphysics, not so much about St. Thomas. We are going to present Thomistic metaphysics, the metaphysics of St. Thomas Aquinas, but just to introduce this character. So, the first thing I want to talk is about the word. What is metaphysics? Any idea? You mentioned Aristotle has a...
The study of being itself.
Good. The metaphysics as a philosophical science. Metaphysics is not an experimental science. It's not that you're doing experiments with things. It's a way of thinking reality and discovering reality through our philosophy and our thought. It started with a book written by Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher, and the name is it does not describe its nature, because the origin of this word is a Greek word, which is metaphysica. The name metaphysics is in Greek. You have metaphysica, which means after physics. Why? Because Aristotle has a whole book on natural physical things. In philosophy, when we say physical, you have to understand material things. So Aristotle has a whole book exploring with thought the different compositions and elements about nature. And after that, he starts like a different science, and it's the book that is after physics. So that's the name in Greek, is after physics, because of this fact that the book of Metaphysica is after the book of physics. So it's kind of non-essential to metaphysics, the name. Very important clarification. In our day, metaphysics is sometimes used for kind of oriental meditation, things like that. Nothing to do with that. No, with metaphysics, with the word metaphysics, we are thinking of the highest form of philosophy. Yeah. Okay. The word that Aristotle used for this science, for this specific science, is the first philosophy, proton philosophia. No? So you have different forms of thinking reality, of thinking, for example, material things, living things. But when you want to think about being itself, like the whole reality, that is metaphysics, and that is why the name is the first philosophy. Okay, what metaphysics study? What is the object of a study? Aristotle says in his book that it's being as being itself. This formula is kind of tricky, but it means that you're trying to think reality as a whole. What is the foundation of the entire reality? No? So it's important to understand that every science has its subject and its method. No? For example, if I study human being, and I try to solve the problem of health, in what science I am? Studying human being and its health, what's the science? Medicine. If I study the bones of human being, I'm studying I don't know the name, but anthropology. I can study the same objects through different ways of looking reality, and I have the different science. In the sense of metaphysics, we are not trying, the object is not some specific object, but we are trying to ask for the cause and the foundation of everything that is real. That is why Aristotle said that all the other science were subordinated, were dependent on metaphysical principles. Yeah, very important. Another way of understanding metaphysics is a definition that St. Thomas Aquinas has in a commentary to a Trinity treatise, and he says that metaphysics study that what is not physical. So my question to you is, what are the things that you can study that are above physical realities?
Truth?
Truth, in a way, but truth,
It's still physics. Okay.
Logic?
but beings. I'm talking about realities that are not material.
Values? Values?
Values, but they're kind of abstract values. You don't have a virtue flying right there. What is a being that is not material? God is one of the questions and the object of metaphysics, because by definition it's non-material. What are the kind of being in the Christian tradition?
Angels?
Angels are spiritual beings that has in no way linked to matter. So angels, in some sense, are objects to metaphysics. In the words of Aristotle, they think about separated intelligence. So they consider that beings that were spiritual, non-material, existed. So it's something. In Catholic tradition, their name is angels. And what else?
Soul.
Exactly, very good answer. The human soul, even when it's linked to matter, we in some sense are like animals. Our human soul, in some sense, is over matter. We have some capacities that exceed the material world. Now we're thinking about, especially two faculties: our capacity to think and our capacity to will. Those two faculties exceed the material realm, and in this sense are objects specifically to metaphysics. So all these objects are specially linked to metaphysics. So I think for the world and for the science to have an idea what metaphysics is, this is a good starting point. Yeah.
What is the difference between metaphysics and theology?
Okay. What I'm thinking too much. In the talk of the afternoon, we are exploring this question, so I don't want to be to speak too much on the things that we are going to discuss this afternoon. In simple words, this is the difference. Metaphysics uses the light of our natural reason. So we think reality with the capacities that every human being has. And a great example is Aristotle. Aristotle in no way read the Bible. He was not formed by Christian tradition, but he was able to think reality and discover the composition of reality, the foundation of reality. Instead, theology, in the proper sense of the word, it's a different science, because the origin of the way of knowing reality of theology is not what I can naturally discover of the world, but what God revealed to me. So the starting point of theology is not what I can naturally discover, but what God revealed. So that's why when you start studying theology, the first thing you have to do in any theological discussion is go to the Bible, go to the sources of revelation, see what was the revelation of God, and you start reasoning based on that. So that's the main difference of metaphysics and theology. Anyway, there is a very important link, because the concepts that metaphysics discovers then are used by theology to explain the theological mysteries. So there is a strong link between metaphysics and theology. Before going to you, there is kind of confusion, because when we say theology, we tend to think that theology is the science of theos. What is the meaning of theos? Thinking about God. But God, you can explore God in different ways. So there is a natural way of exploring God, that is metaphysical way. And then you have the theological way, which is knowing God through revelation. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, would you, just kind of what you just did, but would you distinguish maybe like natural theology versus supernatural theology, basically? So
Yeah.
you can still talk about
Yeah.
theology.
What I teach in the seminary is natural theology, which is what the philosophers have discovered of God with our natural capacities. Yeah. So the arguments for existence of God and things like that. Yeah, so you have to distinguich. Not only that, but supernatural theology is not limited to God. For example, you have moral theology. So moral theology is what God revealed to be good and to be wrong. No, the differences of moral rules. It's also theological, not because we study God, but because we study the source of the moral is what God teaches. Yeah? Okay. Another question about this. Do you at least identify that metaphysics exists, the book of Aristotle, etc.? Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
You can interrupt.
I have one question. I'm not sure if I understand the difference between metaphysics and ontology correctly. Is metaphysics like a broader term, and ontology is just something more specific about being? Nico?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Yeah, ontology means the science of being. No? Ontos in Greek is being, and logos is the intelligence, the concept of being. So ontology is, there are different kind of ontologies, so I don't want to enter into the historical discussion because we are going into deep waters. But I would say this. We consider that the best metaphysics is the metaphysics of being. So the most important concept in metaphysics from a Thomistic viewpoint is being. So in a way, metaphysics and ontology should be like the top of the realistic metaphysics. But it's also true that in some other philosophers, they do metaphysics and they reject at least the idea of being, or they interpret that being in another sense. So, for example, to Aristotle, they say that the most important concept is not being, but it's the form. So it's his metaphysics is based not on being, but on form. So you have there like a difference. Okay. Clear? Good. Second thing, I would like to discuss some vocabulary with you. I don't know if you have any questions, any other, something related to that, maybe not so. Okay, let's go to some concept. I have a presentation in Italian, so this is very basic philosophy. Sorry for the ones that maybe already studied something, but it's not working. But I think discussing basic and simple things is the best way also to, even for those who know something, are going to be able to get deep into reality. So this is Italian. What are the basic concepts for the study? The biggest problem for St. Thomas Aquinas is that philosophers have a specific language with some specific concepts that are different from our normal words. When we try to read St. Thomas Aquinas' philosophy, normally the problem is that he uses words that we do not understand. So I will try to explore in a very basic way, very simple way, what are the concepts and how is the progress of metaphysics knowing reality. This is what I'm going to try to do. Now, as we explain, every science has a method. One of the methods, for example, for chemistry, is I take some matter, I start dividing, observing, and I discover that inside water I have molecules. Inside molecules we have atoms. Inside atoms we have different subatomic particles, and etc., etc. So that is the experimental way of knowing reality. Is that it's valid, it's true, and it's very specific to experimental science. In the case of metaphysics, the way of doing this is not through experimentation, but through reasoning. I watch reality, I see how reality is, and I start thinking what is the composition of reality, not in the material sense, but in the composition that might transcend, that might exceed excel matter. No? So in philosophy, we say this method is resolutio and separatio. We think, no, the thinker, we think. So we will try to do this exercise. As I told you, I do it in a very simple way. If you read the text, it's quite more complex, but you will have an idea of the different concepts that how reality is considered from a metaphysical standpoint. So first composition in reality. No, I have 2 dogs. We can name the dogs. I don't know. You have a dog with a name? Rocky. I named Rocky. Rocky is here, and then Rocky. I have a funny guy that painted Rocky and became a tiger Rocky. Yeah. So we have this. This is a reality. It's a dog. It's clearly a unity. It's a unity. But here something changed. No. Can we say that this is a different reality? No, we tend to say it's the same reality, but something changed. What changed?
It's color.
It's color. So we have here, we distinguish 2 different, the first composition in reality is this. In basic Aristotelic philosophy, we have the first composition. We have like characteristic of that reality, and then we have the reality that changes or stays. This concept in philosophy is accidents and
Form.
substance. So the first distinction of philosophy in reality is substance is the reality, the consistent reality. There is a lot of discussion on how to distinguish a substance and everything. I just want you to understand that in philosophy, in Thomistic philosophy, when I'm saying substance is the thing that is there, and then the characteristic that can change without changing the substance. So those characteristics are named accidents. Yeah? Ever heard of this word? Okay, accident and substance. First distinction, very important.
Father,
Yeah.
is the substance the same as the essence?
No, we will see that. No.
All right.
Similar, but no, not the same. So this first group of concepts, we have the substance, the accidents. In Aristotelic tradition, you distinguish nine types of accidents. You have quantity, you have time, you have like different characteristics that can modify without modifying the reality. And this is the way of explaining accidental change. No? In this example, I discovered that accidents can change, but the substance remain the same. Okay? Good. The definition of accident in philosophy is that what is in other, and substance is that what is in itself. It's a kind of tricky, but that's there is the categorization of accident. Sorry for the Italian, but it's what the presentation had. The origin of the word substance is very interesting because it's under, no? Being under. So it's what is under the colors, the appearance, the changing characteristics. And also subsistence, which is what has existence by itself. Because the accident, the color, you do not find red. Oh, I went down and I found red. No. Red is in the substance. So the accident always has not a proper being, but has being in the substance. So are dependent for being in the substance. Instead, substance has its own being. You have a dog has a proper being. Okay, good. So in this example, the substance is cane, the dog. This is almost Italian lesson. An accident in this kind of the color. What is the color? Black and brown. No, black and brown. Okay. First distinction. So you know 2 words in philosophy. You have substance and you have the accident. In the water, for example, water is a substance, probably, yeah. And the accidents,
The volume, the space,
See-through.
yeah, it's transparent. The temperature, the amount, the quantity is an accident. So, for example, if I eat too much, my quantity grows, and that's an accident because I'm still myself, even when I cannot be identified. So in an accidental change, the substance remains the same, and the accidents change. No? Okay. How much time do we have? I think this presentation was too.
In the schedule, we have a break at 11:30.
15 minutes.
Time is one of the accidents. It's cruel. It's cruel. So, substance philosophers distinguish. First substance is the concrete substance, is this dog. Instead, and that what you were pointing out, the second or secondary substance is the essence. What the substance is definition. So in the case of the dog, is its dogness. No? What defines the dog as such. So in philosophy you have this distinction. First substance is this dog, and the second substance is what defines the substance as such, which is dogness, or the defining factor of that substance. And that normally is essence. We will explore that.
So the essence is the more broad idea of dogness itself?
Yeah, in some sense, yeah. In some sense. So in this case, we have first substance, Rocky, first substance, Fifi, first substance, and then the second substance is the same. For all of the dogs, is the dogness.
So during the Mass, during transubstantiation, what level?
Well, excellent question. For very simple explanation, the substance is bread. The substance disappear to let room to Christ. So the substance change, but the accidents of the bread remains.
So is that done on the primary or the secondary?
Now primary. Yeah, absolutely. It's a concrete bread, disappears and appears the substance of Christ while the accidents remain.
What do you mean when the concrete bread disappears? Does it get annihilated, or does it go somewhere, or?
No.
There is a whole discussion on St. Thomas Aquinas on that specific argument. In philosophy, when, for example, it happens with the corruption of form, disappear is a good term. It's not that you have to have a positive action of destroying, but it's just not there anymore. Not there anymore.
Doesn't, like, the one exception, actually, because for the form of the accident to change, like if you change the substance, the accident has to change.
Yeah, it's a different process.
That's everything that happens in this world. Like, it has to be like that.
Absolutely.
If the substance change,
But
that's the only exception.
Absolutely.
Like, the accident stays with the substance.
It's the only case where accident
That's the only
stays.
one.
Absolutely.
So
it's in that sense, it's kind of miraculous. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, 15 minutes. So second group of concepts. So we have two concepts: accidents and substance. Is that enough for explaining reality? No. That is a starting point. The first distinction in philosophy is substance and accident. Second group of concepts, we have these three dogs. How can we explain that you have three dogs? Yeah.
Their form, so you can get into the question of the soul of animals and that type of thing.
Soul, kind of, but before the argument of the soul, you said form. We will speak about the form. Very good. But what's the evidence that you see to three dogs? You have three substances for sure, but substance cannot explain what.
Maybe they're biology.
biology has a lot, it's a very important aspect in dogs for sure, but from a philosophical standpoint, it's also applicable to non-biological realities. I have, I don't know, 3 stones. I have 3 glasses of water. So I have substances that share what?
The essence.
The essence or the definition. So substance and accident can explain when an accident changed, but cannot explain
The essence.
multiplicity. Why there are substances that share the same defining condition. No? So substance and accident is not enough for explaining multiplicity. So we need a second couple of concepts, which is form and matter. I mean, what I'm doing is kind of heresy philosophically because it's going too fast, but it's important, at least for me, for you to understand the words. This is the idea. So the form, as you mentioned, is the substantial form. This is a very important concept in philosophy, as we mentioned Aristotle, explains the principle that makes a dog to be a dog. Why this is a dog? Because of its form. Why this is a dog? Because of its substantial form. It has a defining source of to be a dog, that is the form, and for the same. Instead, the matter is going to be the factor that distinguish one dog from another. Why we have not only one idea of dog, but we have multiple dogs, is because matter received the determination of form and multiply or distinguish 3 dogs.
So you said the form is what helps us understand what makes it a dog, right?
Exactly.
So what's the difference between that and the essence? Because the essence, you says, like the dogness is not similar, or?
Yeah, it's quite close. It's quite close. I will try to explain it if I arrive after, right? It's quite close. You might say in philosophy, they are not the same. You might say that the form is the most important element of the essence. That's the way of putting in philosophy. Why I'm saying that? Because matter is also has to be considered in some way part of the essence of that substance. Because for you to have a dog, it's essential to have a form and a matter. So essence is like the defining principle, but it includes also matter. Yeah. So normally, at least in Thomistic philosophy, material beings have a composed essence by form and matter. Instead, in the case of angels has a simple essence, which is only substantial form. More or less?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I guess my question is similar to his, and is whether the matter is then just a collection of all the accidents, or whether there's a difference.
Matter is a collection of all the accidents? No. Why? Because matter is so important that it's a principle that in some sense it's defining to produce a new substance. Accidents are the things that do not modify by itself substance. Instead, matter is important to, it's an essential principle to, this dog is different from that dog, so it's essential to substance. So to put it in other ways, matter is inside substance, not with accidents, in a very simple way.
You already mentioned this a little bit, the supernatural beings, talking about angels, but I was very curious within the metaphysics, how you would explain or look at the Trinity within the terms of matter, form, and multiplicity.
You want to kill me.
That's theology.
That is the good observation. Good observation. Theology. Trinitarian theology you cannot reach with our minds. We are unable to think. We know that because Christ revealed. But it's also true that there was centuries of discussion on how to translate these concepts to Trinitarian theology. Not for no. Okay. Because I have to explain other concepts, and I just want you to understand these concepts. Yeah. The distinction in the Trinity is person and nature, which is different. So the first explanation of form and matter is multiplicity. Multiplicity is something that we can see, all of us can see, and we philosophically we can understand that you have to have a reason for this multiplicity, so you have to distinguish substantial form and matter. The other extremely evident phenomenon that we can see is the substantial change. Because the first example, I painted Rocky, but Rocky keeps being Rocky. We know that, we understand that. But the problem is that when Rocky dies, there's no more Rocky. So that's different. That's not the same as changing colors. That's not the same that when I don't know, I go to the barber shop and something like that. No? So here is the tomb of poor Rocky. So something different happened here. And this cannot be explained just by accidental changes. I don't want to say that accidental changes has nothing to do with substantial change. I just want to see that the nature of the change is different. And in this sense, the matter and form explain this kind of change. Philosophically, there was a long explanation of Aristotle, was the first to propose this, that you need something to stay in reality. We understand that when the dog dies, there is no more dog, but the dog does not disappear to nothing. I see that the matter keeps being there. So something stayed, but something changed. What changed? The substantial form. That principle that made the dog be a dog is no more, because we have no dog, but something stayed, the matter. So the matter received a new substantial form. In the case of the dog, dead body, it's not just one form. There are multiple substantial forms that take place, and the decomposition and everything. So you have in the dead body many substantial forms that are together for a reason of history, let's say, something like that. Yeah? So in another phenomenon that explains this distinction is the substantial change. Matter is what stays in reality, what is still there, and the form is what changed. Yeah?
But
Yeah.
so matter and form would be like inside the dog, one could say, I think, right?
Perfect observation. Perfect observation. So matter and form
Yes.
are inside substance, are principles of the substance. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we are not at the level of accidents. So we have accidents, then we have the substance. Inside the substance, we have matter and form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
But is essence also in the dog? Or is essence more like some sort of categorization that humans can think about? Or is it a real thing, essence?
As I answered him, I tell you that the essence of the dog, of the substance of the dog, of this dog, of Rocky, is composed by matter and form. So when you say essence, in some sense, you're naming the composition of the substance itself, the defining factor of the substance itself. Normally in philosophy, you have two meanings of essence. You can speak of a real concrete essence. In the case of the dog, is the unity of matter and form. So the Rocky has its own rocky essence defined by its form and its matter. And also essence in other contexts is used to name the universal defining idea. So as we said before, dogness. So in that sense, essence sometimes means the concept of.
And is that last thing, is that really a thing? Or is that just an idea?
No, in the last sense, it's just an idea. It's just an idea, but not an idea not linked to reality. It's an idea that we form from reality. So it derives from reality. To say that, because idealism pretends that we have, like Plato, no, these existing ideas. No. Yeah. No, ideas are in the mind. So the definition of matter and form. Matter is what is the. It's a very phenomenological definition. Is what is the basis of the substrate in a substantial change, and the principle of multiplicity. Instead, the substantial form is what makes a being to be what it is. No? The defining determination of that being. So, if I have wood, I burn the wood, and I have ashes, the substantial form changed. It was wood, and it changed to ash. Instead, the matter, you can enter into some discussion on the matter. We'll say just that the matter stays. No, the matter, that is a substantial change. And in the multiplicity, we have different dogs. In a way, actually, they're different forms because they are distinguished by matter. But the substantial form as a principle of caninity are the same. No? We have a common substantial form. Instead, the matter is the principle that distinguishes one substance from another.
You ask a question in view of the time. Can I say form is barking in the four legs, and essence is the unconditional friendliness to the owner? And then my question would be, where is the metaphysics? Just to.
I didn't understand the
so
first part.
Form is barking on four legs. Essence is an unconditional friend for the owner of dogs. And then my next thing, where is then the metaphysics in this story?
Yeah, but
or do I killing your storyline?
No, I do not get the first part quite clear. I would say, for example, barking, we define things because of this kind of function, because it's what we see. But dogs are not, barking is not the form of the dog. The form of the dog is some principle that makes a dog to be a dog. And we name that through barking, through some characteristic that tend to be properties. We name them properties. Through properties, we name the form. But the form is not barking. It's what makes a dog to be a dog.
Four legs is form.
Yeah, but the problem with that kind of phenomenological definition is that you have a dog born without four legs, and it's still a dog. So we use these properties, but it's not that form is limited to that. Yeah.
Would you say metaphysics? Would you say the sciences? The point of the sciences is to figure out the properties of what dogness is, while metaphysics deals more with the fact that you can understand dogness, for example.
There is, I think science helped a lot in this distinction. For example, we have the DNA, which is a very powerful tool to distinguish substances and forms and things like that. Absolutely. Part of philosophy is trying to do this work of understanding realities, especially natural philosophy works a lot on natures and definitions of natures, but it's not the last question. The last question is trying to understand why things are. Not why things are this or that, but why things are. So this is very important. So I agree part of the work is that, but not the most meaningful question. So we have to finish, no?
We can do a few more minutes, but yeah.
Okay, we will just name the last and yes?
No, I just wanted to clarify for myself. Is matter always for primary substance? For every primary, for example, is matter to, for example, a specific dog? Or can matter also be applied to, for example, the canine race?
Yeah, the idea of dogness, which is second substance, it has no matter and form. It's just an idea in the mind. Instead, the first concrete substance, in that substance we have matter and form. Yeah. So real matter and form are in the first or primary substance. Yeah. One last aspect before going there. In Thomistic philosophy, form in an animal has also the function of soul. The soul, my soul is my substantial form. So when we die, I don't want to enter into animals, but when we die, our form keeps being. Our substantial form is the only substantial form we know for sure that the matter takes another form, but the form keeps being. So that's the incorruptibility of the human soul. It's a substantial form. This was an innovation of St. Thomas Aquinas. Well, sorry for too much information. Last couple of concepts, I will name it. We don't have the time to explain. And the most difficult step is this. We have discussions, what are the reasons to go further? Aristotle arrived more or less to form. He said that the most important in the Metaphysics, in the book of Metaphysics, if you go to the book, 7th book, you arrive that the form is the most defining factor of reality. But we have some phenomena or some truths that are not explained. One of them is creation. Why a dog is. With form we know why a dog is a dog, but we don't know the reason why there is being. So the discussion on creation. Another very important discussion, more we would say almost theological discussion, is how angels are composed. What's the composition of angels? Because if angels are pure form, they should be pure perfection, absolute perfection. So how can we distinguish one angel from another? How can we distinguish angel from God? There has to be some kind of composition. So that is another interesting discussion. And then existence. We discussed why we have we have accidental change. We discussed why we have substantial change, but we didn't discuss why things are. Why we have a dog, a plant, a rock, and they share some kind of strange common perfection, what we know and we realize, which is existence. All of them exist. We can consider that all of them have a common perfection, which is existence. So what is that? So philosopher has arrived to the last pair of concepts, which is essence, composed by matter and form in some cases, and the act of being. That is the last resolution in which the philosophers distinguish inside substance. The most radical composition of substance in realistic philosophy is essence and the act of being. This is a very simple explanation. We can say many things, but I just wanted to know that, to let you know that you have this final group of concepts. Okay, finish.